Should you rent or buy your medical office space? Tune in so you can find out what's the best option for you. Hi everyone, my name is John Rafael Schneider. I am a private practice board certified neurologist in the Tampa Bay area. I've been in private practice for over 17 years, but 8 years ago I started my own practice from scratch, and I've been able to grow it to multiple providers and a very successful practice. In this channel, I want to share some of the things I've learned along the way, so hopefully you can grow your own practice without having to make the same mistakes that I did. Renting or buying. Making the right decision can have major implications in your financial and business future of your medical practice. And this is a very complex decision. And in this presentation, you'll see that I favor definitely buying your medical space, but this is not the best option for everyone. And what I'm going to be doing is sharing my personal experience. 17 years medical practice. The first 9 years I was renting, and the last 8 I've been owning my medical space. And I'll share what's been my experience, but this is definitely not financial or tax advice. You should definitely look at this as an educational video and not advice. And you should definitely consult with your financial advisor, your tax advisor, and your attorney before making any major decisions like purchasing your medical practice. So let's start with the presentation. These are some of the advantages of owning your medical office space, and we're going to go over them in detail. In my personal experience, the first 9 years I was renting, and that was because I was part of a very good big group that had very well located medical office space that was high quality and was right next to the hospital, and they were happy with that setup. But one of the reasons I decided to start my own practice is that I wanted to try to own my medical space. So when I did this, I already had many years of practicing in the area, and I knew that I had the patients and that I had a business model that worked, that was successful, and I knew that I could afford to own a medical space and be able to pay the mortgage because I knew I could be busy. I knew the demand for our services was very large, and it still is, and it's growing. And so I decided that since my plan was a long-term plan to stay in the location and to practice medicine for 10 years or more, that it definitely made sense to invest in the medical space and get all the advantages of owning. And one other thing I wanted to mention about when you're looking at your medical space, this is where you work, where you do your business, and you're investing in that. I see it as a business investment, as buying an asset. It's something that's going to bring you income and financial security, which is different than the way that I look at my personal residence, which is definitely not an asset. If you go by what Robert Kiyosaki said in his book about Rich Dad Poor Dad and the cash flow quadrants, your personal residence is definitely a liability because the bigger house you have, the more your liability in terms of expenses for maintaining it, furnishing it, heating it, cooling it, all those sort of things. And with a bigger medical practice, that means that you have more space to either lease the space out or to grow your practice, scale your practice, and get the benefits of scale. So I definitely look at it in different ways. And I guess what I'm saying is that I rather, and I've done both. I've had big, large residences that I eventually thought were too big and were more of a liability and were eating up my cash flow, and I've had more smaller footprints in terms of housing, which I found many more benefits to that than having a really big house. But when it comes to the office space, I think bigger has been better in my experience. So let's go over some of the benefits of owning, where there's this stability that you get from stability of cost that you get when you own your space, because the mortgages are usually a fixed rate unless you get a variable rate, but usually for this type of purchase, the mortgages are like a fixed rate. So what we're gonna be your your office space, your rent, your not your rental, but your mortgage expense every month. When you're renting, there's also the lease often will have the option to increase the rent every year, and so that you don't have that stability of your costs. Now, how about equity building? This is a huge benefit of owning your space, is that you can build equity, and that can become, your office space can become a valuable asset that later on could be used for future investments. You can use it for retirement. You could use it to fund your practice expansion if you need to do a further expansion. So definitely, you get something out of that monthly payment that you're doing for your office space. You're getting more equity into that office space, and that can be a great investment. And there's tax benefits, and when you are owning your office space, you can get a mortgage interest deduction that is not capped like for your personal residence, and you can also get deductions for property taxes, and some certain maintenance expenses can be also deducted as business expenses. But definitely you want to consult with your tax professional to find out what kind of things can be deducted and what are the other tax benefits of owning your medical practice. When you own your practice, you have more control over your space. You can dictate the layout and the design, and you can customize it to your patient's need and optimize it for flow of patients to the practice and for patient comfort without having to ask permission from the landlord. You're more likely to make those changes if you know that it's your property and you're investing in your own space, and it's less likely that someone else would do that for the space if they're not seeing the direct benefits. They won't be as invested as a landlord as you are as the owner. And then there is the long-term stability. So again, you have when you're renting, there's lease renewals, and there could be increases in rent, or you could actually be forced out of your space because they want to use it for something else or allocate it to someone else. Right now, for example, the space that I have is in a really good location next to the hospital. It's the right size. I love my space. I can't think of a better space than the one that I have right now. But if I was renting, I wouldn't have the stability of knowing that I can stay there for as long as I want. I could be forced out of my space, and then it would be very hard for me to find a similar place, and it would probably be very costly. And then there's when you own your professional space, it's a real estate investment, and real estate is usually a solid investment, especially if you're doing it in the long run. And that's the only caveat that I have for. I think it's definitely it's better to own than to rent if it's for the long run. And usually in medical practice, you want to be on it for the long run because you want to build the referral sources, the network, the reputation. All those things take time, and most physicians that are in private practice, they'll choose a place where they want to practice and they'll stay there for as long as they can. That's the ideal scenario. So in that sense, it definitely makes sense to own your space. Now, if you think you're going to be moving around, definitely you don't want to do that. You want to rent. And this investment can serve as an asset and can help with retirement planning. So this is as you build equity, this becomes a very valuable asset. It's kind of a form of forced savings, and that's it is you anyway. You're gonna need a place to practice anyway, and might as well keep up some of that equity and have the forced savings and all the other benefits that we talked about in terms of tax savings and debt pay down and all of that. So when you want to retire, you can either sell it if you don't want the hassles of leasing it, but you could also lease it and then have that passive income in the long run. Personalization. When you own your space, you can really customize it to represent your brand, your personality. And that's true in our practice. We've really invested in our place to look nice and to reflect our values of efficiency We're very big on lean methodology, so our place has a flow to it with minimal waste in motion and space, and it's modern and clean and a pleasant, comfortable place for our patients. My patients deserve to have a place where they can feel comfortable. And I'm very proud when my patients comment on how nice our office is and how much they like our waiting room and how they could spend all day in the waiting room because it's so nice. And that really is very satisfying to hear. Your investment in your office space has the potential for extra income. If you have a space that is larger than you need, you could sublease part of your space and make extra income that way. And when you own your space, you have more control over maintenance, and you can make sure that you procure the best contractors and that you buy the best equipment. Let's say you have to replace the air conditioning, you can make sure you have the best equipment and the best warranty and pay for quality, which you don't have to be asking the landlord to make to keep up with the maintenance, because you're gonna be in charge of that, and because it's for you, you have a vested interest in making sure that it's the best quality. And then there's the potential for appreciation. So in general, real estate appreciates over time, especially if you're doing it for the long run, which is what I recommend. And that's an additional bonus of owning your real estate. If you're renting, you definitely don't get any benefits from appreciation. Actually, you have to pay higher rents because of appreciation. And then there's the asset transfer. When you die, your inheritance goes to your heirs, and they can have all this wealth that you've built up in equity. Now, there's also some downsides or responsibilities that come with owning your space. When you own the space, you are definitely in charge of maintenance, so you gotta make sure that if you're someone that is good about making sure your place looks good and is up to date in maintenance, then that's not a problem. And then you're also in charge of insurance. If you're renting, you're paying for the insurance through your rent anyway. But if you own, you have to pay for your own insurance. And then property taxes, and of course there's the risk with real estate. Real estate is an investment, and like any other investment, it can go up and down, and there's always risk with that. So when making this decision, it's very important to consider your financial situation. I think it's important to know that your business model works. What I mean is that your medical practice is profitable and able to afford the mortgage and all that. So I think in my situation, I waited 9 years to own. I could have done with 2 or 3 years, just to know that I had a viable business model. But once you do, I think buying is probably a better option. And you need to take into account your long-term goals for if you're going to be in that place for a long period of time, that you can ride out any ups and downs in real estate. And you need to learn about the market conditions and real estate conditions for the area where you're planning to purchase, and make sure that it's in a growing area, that there's going to be a growing demand for this type of real estate and your type of medical services. So I hope this helps. If you find it helpful, please subscribe and like the video. I'm going to continue to produce similar videos. I'm a big proponent, advocate for physicians who practice in patient care. I know we have many options, but we need more physicians doing direct patient care. And I see how with the increasing demand for our services, a lot of patients are suffering because they're having to wait long periods of time to be able to get in to see doctors. And as I get older and start looking at retirement, I want to know that there's going to be a very large supply of happy, engaged physicians to take care of patients. And so I plan to practice for as long as I can, and I want other physicians to be able to practice and enjoy their practice. That's why I have the course on lean methodology, and something you might want to check out. And lean methodology really helps you enjoy practicing medicine by removing all the hassles of practicing medicine, or minimizing them, so that you can focus on the fun part of practicing medicine, which is the patient interaction and the intellectual stimulation of trying to solve the clinical problems that we're faced with. So wishing you the best. Thank you for listening.